You'll own nothing and you'll be happy about it. That is Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. Or at least someone wrote that on the World Economic Forum. Let's go through these 8 points very quickly. The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower. I'm actually okay with that. I don't want to be the world police. You won't die waiting for an organ donor. They will be made in 3D printers. Sounds fantastic. You'll eat much less meat. Meat will be an occasional treat, not a staple, for the good of the environment and our health. No, I disagree. Meat is great for the environment and our health. And these people who want these globalist plans are probably not the best intentioned folk. 8 billion people will be displaced by climate change. Soros, open borders. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. We all emit carbon dioxide, folks. You actually breathe it out. There will be a global price on carbon. This will help make fossil fuels history. It'll also impoverish everybody, destroy the industrialized world, raise the prices of food because they need to be shipped, and also they need to be harvested by fossil fuel using machines. They need to be fertilized that way as well, at least on a vast scale if you are a large farm. You could be preparing to go to Mars. Scientists will have worked out how to keep you healthy in space. Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. We live in a republic in the United States. It's not a democracy, folks. Sorry to tell you. We can say it is a representative democracy, but it's not a direct democracy, and nor should it be. Direct democracy is not good. Western values, well, what do you mean by Western values? What values are you trying to break? Are we talking about individualism? Are we talking about freedom? Are we talking about free trade? Are we talking about Christian morals? You know, don't kill, don't steal, I don't know, don't covet your neighbor's wife. You know, don't lust after random people. Don't be an adulterer or an adulteress. Be honest. Don't give false witness to people. Don't attack folk. You mean those values? Because I know the commies in the streets are against those values. Folks, welcome. And this is AllMinucOne. My name is Bill. A little different than my usual opening. Yeah, there's some quotes there, but I don't always do that. I like to do that, but it is, something that I like to bring up quotes from the past because of knowledge, because of wisdom that people have. And most people that have knowledge and wisdom are not appreciated. Socrates was killed because of his knowledge and wisdom, or was going to be killed. He decided to kill himself. But just to plug real quick, if you like this content, hit like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed, folks, because I lost, just not very many, but a few subscribers randomly. Seemed weird. The YouTube studios was saying, oh, you didn't lose any, but the number had changed. I know what the number is. Right now I'm at 72. I was at 73. It dropped down to 70, and then it went back up to 72. I don't even know what's going on there, but I do know that YouTube likes to unsubscribe people. So make sure you are, and make sure you check up often or hit the notification bell, as everyone says. I don't really care if you do that. I don't do that with anybody. Just go, subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff, and share, because this information I have to present is important. And what we're going to talk about today is the World Economic Forum and those in power who wish to implement this new Great Reset, or this global communist utopia. And folks, they've been working at it for a very long time. Now, I made 2 videos earlier on my other segments, on my quick shot segments. Those are meant to be briefer, less detailed, and just me ranting, as I often am. But here we're going to get into a little bit of meat and potatoes. So this is from the World Economic Forum. It says, meet our young global leaders for 2020. Each year, the World Economic Forum names its new YGLs. Young global leaders are under the age of 40. Influential people who meet or who want to make the world a better place. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. What does the winner of the FIFA Women's Cup have in common with the Prime Minister of Finland? Really, nothing. They are both young leaders who gained international repute over the last 12 months. And now Megan, what's her name? Rapinoe, or I'm not even going to pronounce names here. Whatever. And Sanan Miran have been recognized as young global leaders by the World Economic Forum, joining the community of people dedicated to changing the world for the better. I don't know this lady did, other than win the World Cup and then ask for more money because, I'm being oppressed as a woman, even though I'm ultra rich, and I negotiated in my contract to be paid for the specific amount in a certain way, and that's why I ended up being less than the men's pay. Also, much lower ratings. But no, this is current year, as the wokest like to say. And in the current year, everything has to be about oppression. There is no personal responsibility, unless you're a white male, of course. And then you have to go back and make a big deal, and everybody virtue signals and act as a bunch of sheeple lemmings. Oh, the world is in a horrible place right now, folks. Not because people were foolish. People have always been foolish. But because there are people out there who wish to rule your life and dictate everything you can do, everything you can say, how much energy you can use, how you eat, how you think. We are truly, finally coming into the Orwellian world. Or as I have pointed out before, the world of the mark of the beast from the Christian perspective, that you must worship the beast, which is a nation or an empire or a political entity based on the Bible interpreting itself. That goes to Daniel, by the way. You can go to Daniel. Daniel helps you interpret Revelations. The beast system has a church over the state. Interesting. What church would that be? I think it's the Catholic Church. I could be wrong. It could be the cult of woke. It could be many, many things. But if you look at the current Pope, he is a Jesuit, which is the military arm of the Catholic Church. They're the ones that carried out the Spanish Inquisition. They were part of the Counter-Reformation, the reformers or Protestants that came out of the Catholic Church. They would hunt down and murder and kill people, and they rewrote the interpretation of the book of Revelations from its ancient understanding to what most modern Protestant and evangelical churches believe. They've done a very good job at subversion, and the current Pope is part of the woke scold. But I didn't mean to get on about that. I want to talk about the World Economic Forum. So it says each year, the Forum of Young Global Leaders identifies the world's most promising leaders under the age of 40, people driving innovation for positive change across civil society, arts, culture, government, and business, by connecting them to a community of remarkable peers and investing further in their leadership abilities. The aim is to create a ripple effect of over 5 years that benefits the organizations and the world. Here are some of the 114 YGLs that make up the class of 2020. And of course, it goes through a bunch of names now. We keep going down here. This is interesting here. Alicia Garza, co-founder of Black Lives Matter. Oh, she's in this group? Wow. Black Lives Matter being the communist group, folks, that want to get rid of the family. And we can read about all these people and their contributions to the world and why they are special people for some reason. Here's a full list. It's hard to read because it's all jumbled together. But I do want to bring up something interesting. This right here It's a little meme. It says Klaus Schwab, founder of the and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, create a forum of young global leaders in 2004 to help meet world increasing complexity and interdependent problems. According to this guy right here, Tulsi Gabbard's there, Alex Soros, that would be George Soros' son, I would assume, or grandchildren. Dan Crenshaw. Wonder if this is legit. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, the big tech overlord, if you would, who censors your post and fact checks things that don't need to be fact checked. David D. Rothschild. Well, that's not surprising. The Rothschilds are extremely influential in the background because of their great banking empire, including the Federal Reserve Bank and the World Monetary Fund and all those good things. And then old Megan, whatever her name is. So here is the Young Global Leaders website. They have this very awe-inspiring video and all these people talking. And, there's Charles Schwab. Look at all the horribleness of Africa. That we have given so much money to Africa over the years. And something like 9 times, 10 times more than what we did in the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe has done nothing. We need to develop their economies, folks. We need to develop their industry. But what we're doing instead is we're plundering them, and these people are a part of that. So the Forum from Young Global Leaders is a community with the vision, courage, and influence to drive positive change. Well, thank God that certain people who are in elite positions and rich are able to drive change. I really love the oligarchical plutocracy. Just am ecstatic about it. During a transformational 5-year experience, the YGLs are inspired to be bold in undertaking a sense of shared responsibility, impact, and ambition. And so here, the Druid Collective, discovering how science and technology are being brought together to help those affected by paralysis walk. Okay. But people do this all the time on their own. They don't need to be in the World Economic Forum. Meet our members. Here's a bunch of people. View more members. Let's view some members. Remember I just showed you this little thing, old Mr. Crenshaw there? Well, if we go down here, we can just Google. We'll type in Dan. Guess who comes up? Dan Crenshaw. He's a Republican, folks. Be careful what you wish for. Let's type in old Tulsi. She's older than 40, though. Is that how you spell her name? Make sure I got that right. T-U-L. Okay. Dyslexia in action, folks. Let's see. Is she on here? Sure enough, she sure is. How about old Mark? Let's look up old Zuck. Oh, there he is. So you guys can do this yourself. This is younggloballeaders.org. You can go to community and look up who's a part of it. It's not that hard. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who are a part of it. More importantly, though, what I want to talk about are the planks of communism and how our nation in the United States has becoming increasingly communistic over the decades, especially since the progressive era. See, when I say things like this, I'm not saying things as a speculator per se. I am saying things as an observer who is well studied in the history and understands, at least basically, how economics work and philosophy and first principles. So you can find this on conservativeusa.net. I believe it's quite an old article, but it will serve our purposes here because what I wanted to look at specifically were these 10 planks. So it says Marx was paid by the League of the Just, later named the Communist League, in 1847 to write the Communist Manifesto and paid again to rewrite it in 1848. Not a very good commie getting paid for his work, by the way. The manifesto was intended to incite violent revolutions, was a recipe for tyranny itself, and was later used as propaganda. A glorious goal to be believed in, to blind followers and realities of brutal dictatorship and that oppressed all workers and slaughtered millions under communist rule. Yeah, it's what happens. Communism just brings everybody down to poverty except for those in power, those within the party, and those who run the state. That's how it works, folks. Everything else, that's your stupid fantasy theory pipe dream. Not how it works at all. That is, making everyone equal and bringing everybody up, and it's not how it works at all. Hitler's Mein Kampf and Mao's Little Red Book served similar evil and deadly purpose. Now, I haven't covered Mein Kampf per se, but I have covered before the tenets of the Nazi Party. I've covered what fascism actually is and not what your delusional state of mind or professors say it is based on the writings of those who created the socio-economic and political philosophy. I've also covered Mao's Little Red Book, which was written by a gentleman who was later essentially outcast by the Chinese government, detained, imprisoned, all that stuff, based on violating the Little Red Book that he wrote. And it wasn't Mao, folks. Mao may have said some of the sayings, but it was this particular gentleman who wrote the book who said that this is, we should do this to inspire our comrades. Many dictatorships throughout history and today attempt to disguise their tyranny with fancy labels and phony philosophies to make slavery seem somehow just and essential. Another example of this was earlier doctrine of divine rule of kings. 100% agree. This is why I'm a classical liberal, folks, because I do not believe in serfdom. I do not believe in slavery and enslaving mankind. Communism is a form of slavery. So is socialism. You are not free in those systems. These 10 steps are just a part of the manifesto and the full text, which can be found on the web. Western nations, including the United States, have gradually implemented virtually all of Marx's 10 key steps towards creating a dictatorship. And we're on the precipice of that now, folks. Not because Donald Trump, my friends, is and was the end-all be-all, never thought so, but he was holding this back. In fact, in my opinion, because of my faith, this is inevitable. It doesn't mean I have to joyfully go along with it. It doesn't mean that I can't warn you or that I should not want it to be held off. I have a daughter who is 16, who will be graduating very soon, who's going to be entering the world. I want her to have a good life. I have a child on the way. My wife is pregnant. I would like her or him, when they come into this world, to have a good life. We'll work it out and we'll survive. But the suffering and terror that these things will bring about are far worse than you fools out there who support socialism and communism. It is better to take personal responsibility and go out and help your neighbor. If you have money to spare, it is better to help your friends in your family. Join a church, do community outreach that way. Do not make it through centralized government. Because what we are seeing right now is exactly what would happen when you allow the government to do such things. Businesses destroyed, riots and rioters allowed to go about things because they have the proper politics. Murders in the streets, carjackings are up, arson, looting, terribleness, folks. And many, many, many fools have voted to perpetuate this. It's so sad. It is so sad. Americans would be wise to study the 10 planks and demand that the President and Congress abolish all laws, regulations, and agencies which govern these and all other unconstitutional seizures of power. Communism was never intended to free man, but to enslave him. Indeed, the Communist Manifesto promised a dictatorship of the proletariat. That is just mob rule, folks. History, provided it always ended up slaughtering and enslaving millions of the proletariat. So what are the 10 planks in brief? Abolish private property and land and application of all rents and land to public purpose. A heavy, progressive, and gradual income tax. Abolish all rights of inheritance. Confiscation of property. of all immigrants and rebels. Now, the immigrants thing is interesting considering now they just want open borders, but it's for other means. It really is. It's to help drive instability. Now, you folks out there, you're probably not listening to me, but you folks out there on the left who are, oh, open borders, everything's great, open borders, or you libertarian types, and trust me, I've been down that road before in my youth. You don't understand that the economics of having open borders actually makes things worse for everybody, including the immigrants. You essentially import a new third world nation, and the reason why is because you're displacing work for some, while these other people are working at a lower cost of labor because they're illegal. They don't have the legal protections, and they end up living often in ghettos, and of course that breeds crime as well. See what happened in California. The ghettos that once were havens of, say, drug crime in the 70s with the Bloods and the Crips as such, which were black gangs, have been largely taken over by the Latinos. And of course, there is a ton of human trafficking, sex trafficking specifically, with all illegal immigration. But I digress. Let's get back to this. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state. By means of national bank and state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. Extension of factories, instruments, and production owned by the state. The bringing into cultivation of wastelands and improvement of soil generally in accordance with a common plan. Sound like environmentalism to you? Equal liability of all to labor, establishment of industrial armies. By the way, the United States was never meant to have a standing army, folks. It was never intended to have such a thing. That's why it has to be reauthorized every year by Congress. And this says especially for agriculture. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries. We have that in the United States. I'm going to cover how all this has been implemented in the United States, by the way. Gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. Yes, the city versus the countryside. Always the problem. Us folk here in the more rural areas, I live in suburbia, but it is more rural in my area. Us folks here out in the rural countryside, we don't agree with those of you in the city most of the time. Why? Well, because you're fine with being a socialite in the city and being rich if you can be, and having all kinds of draconian restrictions placed on you. And me, I value freedom. Free education for all children in public schools. Abolition of children's factory labor in its present form. That's the one thing. I don't really like child factory labor. I do think that child labor is good, and I mean in the sense, the old-fashioned sense, work around the house, chores. If your family owns a business, you help them work the business. Why? Because it breeds good work ethic and responsibility. And it teaches people something very young, and that is the value of earning. No one would chide a child having a lemonade stand or shoveling out someone's driveway. Well, I hate to tell you folks, but that's child labor. Combination of education with industrial production. So real quick, just back to this. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. U.S. won't be a superpower. The donating organ things, that has to do with the fourth industrial revolution and the Great Reset. You also have to understand that Elon Musk Neuralink's a part of all this as well. You eat much less meat. Yeah, that's part of the environmental stuff. Billions of people will be misplaced by climate change or displaced. I don't know about that. We'll see when it happens. Fossil fuel, that's the environmental stuff again. Prepare to go to Mars. Will have worked out to keep you healthy in space. I doubt it. Western values will have been tested. By the way, all this is supposed to have happened by 2030. Yeah. If you ask me, by 2030, America will be deeply ensconced into a very, very nasty civil war. I've been saying this for... Now we have this little skirmish. We have some stuff going on inside the government. We have people out in the streets, whatever. But the thing that will really happen, will boil up over time, the resistance as in the patriot resistance, winning the Constitution versus the government or the communists. I say 10 years. I hope I am wrong. I will tell you this. I was right about Joe Biden, Build Back Better, and the World Economic Forum, and him wanting to implement the Great Reset and using the coronavirus as a means to do so. Absolutely right. Told my wife I hate being right. I do. I don't want to be right about this stuff, folks. It is scary. It is darkness. You do not know the suffering and the pain that will be coming to you. Excuse me. Marx describes in his Communist Manifesto 10 steps necessary to destroy a free enterprise system and replace it with a system of unlimited government power so as to effect a communist socialist state. This is the Jeremiah Project, by the way. This is the website. Let me make this a little bit bigger for your viewing pleasure and mine as well. America has increasingly been adopting more and more Marxist ideas, sometimes more subtle than others over time, yet sometimes rather openly. Whether it's political change or social change like cultural Marxism, we have witnessed a long march through our institutions to embrace Marxism. Many have argued the policies of FDR began the movement towards Marxism in large scale. Yes, there's no argument there. He just absolutely did. He just took over the government, discarded the Constitution, decided to stack the court if the Supreme Court did not side with him, and then the Supreme Court suddenly, all of a sudden, said, okay, well, listen, we'll do what you say. Through executive order, abolished the gold standard in the United States, which is unconstitutional, folks. Destroyed 2/3 of all wealth overnight. Industrialized, expanding on Hoover's policies, by the way, but industrialized the entire farming sector of the United States. They are still on subsidies. Now, I want to go back here to these 10 planks real quick and just look at this. Combination of agriculture and manufacturing industries. Well, that happened. But this gets into it. It says, more recently, Obama openly suggested Marxist ideologies and surrounded himself with a number of outspoken Marxists. It's funny, though, because as we creep toward Marxism in the United States, more and more, I mean, we're already largely there with the mixed economy. Folks, you have to understand, you really, really have to understand, this all just goes to corporatism. The neolibs and the neocons have been doing this forever. They're all globalists. This is the globalist agenda. Here's his endorsement of the Chicago branch of the Democratic Socialists of America for an Illinois state seat. Obama was later endorsed by the Communist Party. Oh, and this is from Accuracy in Media. I was at their gala last year. Anyways, it says, in 2006, Obama endorsed openly Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders. How he lost to Hillary Clinton in 2016 Democratic nomination has been speculated by many to be the result of election fraud. Of course it was. It's not speculative. We know. We have the emails from the DNC. Say, Black Lives Matter fully embraces the 10 planks of communism. Organizations like Antifa and Refuse Fascism. Black Lives Matter co-founder, what's her name? Paretsi Coyers said in a newly surfaced 2015 that she and her fellow organizers were trained Marxist. By the way, you're not... Fascism and communism are practically the same thing, folks. There's so few little differences, like you're nitpicking. Free markets, laissez-faire capitalism, a free exchange, voluntarism. That's simply me going, hey, need your driveway shoveled? It just snowed out there. Don't want to do it? I'll do it for $10. Kid comes along, someone else comes along, so I'll do it for $5. That's all it is. And then you go, oh, okay, well, how about I pay both of you because, they're kids, some more money. We do this with waiting. People wait on us. They serve us food. We go, oh, you did a good job. I'm going to give you a tip. I'm going to give you a big tip because I like you and you did a good job and you kept me happy the whole time. My food was good. You constantly checked on me when I needed it. You left me alone when I didn't want to be interrupted or sorry, when I did want to be interrupted, you filled my drink often enough. I didn't have to yell for you or call for you. I didn't have to wait around forever. It was a pleasant experience. Here is some extra money for your pocket. And part of the reason why we tip, of course, too, is because mostly a lot of waitresses aren't even paying minimum wage because they're expected to make money in tips, which is great. It's perfect. It's awesome. It means that people reward you based on your merit, if they're good people. Anyways, then it talks about Manning Johnson, which I brought up here many and many a times. And then here it says the Access Harris poll online survey found that 37% of Americans would prefer to live in a socialist country because they never have and they're idiots. Fox News survey of registered voters, 25% had favorable views of socialism because they are stupid. Sorry, folks. If you have favorable views of socialism, you don't have a proper perspective of the world or how things work or human nature or psychology and how people interact, how people get incentives to work hard, why people are creative, or understand that some people, a very few select amount of people, are just ultra hyper workers. They just work all the freaking time. And that's often why they're very successful. I know what the communists say. They go, oh no, they just inherited the money from mommy and daddy. Oh, they were just given the position. Oh, they spent all their money on yachts. Dude, you live in a fantasy world. You live in one of the richest nations in the world. If you make over $30,000 a year, you are in the top 1%. Top 1% of all of the world of wealth owners. You're comparing yourself to other people who are wealthier than you. No one ever in a time of history, including kings, live as well as you. You have heating, you have air conditioning, you have clean water, you poop and clean water. Some people have to walk miles just to get clean water. Most of you have television. Most of you have cars, or you will have a car if you're young and you can afford a car yet. Most of you have somewhere to live, someone to stay with. You have food. There's this myth out there of what is it? Food deserts, food insecurity. It doesn't exist. People make bad choices. People make bad choices, and that is their fault. Now, can we help educate them? Can we help them out? Absolutely. But almost nobody lives in a food desert. What it is they decide not to go get good food, and they get junk food at, a grocery store, or not the grocery store, sorry, at like a convenience store, or, they go to McDonald's or whatever it is. So Zogby Analytics poll found a similar result. 29% of likely voters had a positive view of socialism. This is horrible, folks. These are people essentially admitting, regardless if they're successful or not, that they can't take care of themselves and neither can anyone else. And therefore, you need some overlord to do it, to redistribute the wealth. And what they don't understand is they're actually going to be far more poor and things are going to be far worse. Go ask anyone who lived in the former Soviet bloc. And I have many friends, folks, many friends, because I trained Russian martial arts for some odd years. And I know a lot of people from Eastern Europe, and they live here in the United States now for a reason. Following the original 10 planks within the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx in 1848, followed by a discussion of how America has adopted each of the planks. Abolition of private property. This is number one. The courts have interpreted the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution in 1868 to give the government far more eminent domain power than it was originally intended. Under the rubric of eminent domain and various zoning regulations, land use regulations of the Bureau of Land Management, property taxes, and environmental excuses, private property rights have become very diluted. You don't really own your land. It's more like you rent it from the government. This is absolutely true. One of the things that Teddy Roosevelt did, as being the first major progressive president that we ever had, he implemented the National Park Service. If you are not in the knows, if you're not in the awares, folks, let me explain to you that many, many people in Congress and in Senate go build homes in the midst of private land and then expand the Park Service around their land so they have no neighbors. They purposely do this. You can go look it up. I would not lie to you. I am probably one of the most honest people you will ever meet in your life, and I'm not saying that to ingratiate myself. I'm just saying that because I have a disdain, a huge disdain for hypocrisy and lies. I hate pretenders. I hate fake people. I hate being dishonest If I have to lie for some reason, I really generally never do, but if I did have to lie for some reason, I'm not good at it. It's horrible. I don't like it. Anyways, here it says, as a result of private property and lands, vehicles, and other forms of seizure almost every day in this country under the forfeit laws, provisions of the RICO status and the so-called drug war, and I'm anti-drug war. There are also unconstitutional red flag laws. This is about your guns. Private ownership of property are required to get permission from government relative to the use of their property. One of the reasons why I moved to West Virginia is because we don't have zoning laws, guys. The cities might, but generally speaking, within the county, no zoning laws. Very, very free state here. Those who hold property are required to pay taxes on that property in order to keep it. That is true. I have to do that every year. Comes out of my mortgage and escrow, but still have to do it. The NAIS, run by a branch of the USDA, considers your animals not to be yours, but part of the national herd. This, again, progressive era stuff that came about. If they can force you to register your farm and your animals, you do not own them. They own them because they control them. And they'll come after you with your taxes or whatever to, arrest you because you didn't do what they said. The heavy progressive or gradual income tax. The 16th Amendment of the United States Constitution, 1913, this is when they implemented the Federal Reserve and the federal income tax overnight on Christmas Eve when the majority of Congress was not present. And then Woodrow Wilson signed a shameful, shameful act, traitor to the Constitution, which some scholars maintain was never properly ratified. Yeah, that's true. I haven't read about this in a long time, but that is true from my understanding. The Social Security Act of 1936. More socialism, folks. Social Security. Joint House Resolution 192 of 1933, and various state income tax established this major Marxist coup in the United States many decades ago. These progressive taxes have replaced tithings for many and continue to drain the lifeblood out of the American economy and greatly reduce the accumulation of desperately needed capital for future growth. Businesses starts job creation and salary increases. The income tax requires of us that we serve two masters in violation of Matthew 6:24. Requires of us that we rob God in violation of Malachi 3:8. Requires that we commit idolatry in violation of Exodus 23. Requires of us to use unjust weights and measures in violation of Leviticus. This goes back to usury laws that they used to have in the medieval period. Leviticus 19:35 through 36. It requires us to sign contracts with foreign and alien gods in violation of Exodus. Now, what these biblical notations here, what they're talking about, referring to these books of the Bible and these chapters, and all are, they're talking about serving two masters in Matthew. God says you cannot serve wealth or mammon, as it was written in the King James, but you cannot serve wealth and God. Jesus was an anti-materialist. He was not a communist. The Christians were not communists, folks. They were anti-materialist. If you read Marx, the entire philosophy is based on materialism. If you read Mussolini's Doctrine of Fascism, he will tell you that we reject Marxism and the struggle of the classes and materialism, because in fascism, it isn't the material state of things, it is the spiritual state of things. And the state itself is the head of that. And this is one of the reasons why communism and fascism essentially are mirrors of each other. They are just run in slightly different ways. They are still centralized, planned economies. At the time, fascism was seen as the third way, a different way from capitalism or communism. Read their writing, stop listening to idiots, and never, ever, ever listen to a Marxist because they don't know what they're talking about. They have no clue about economics. Everything they talk about is theory. You have people like Voldemort, the neckbeard hipster who likes to sound overly intellectual and is constantly disingenuous and has committed a zillion logical fallacies in every argument that he makes. We'll point to collective workers groups, co-ops, in Uruguay. Oh, there's a study done in Uruguay. Do you know what happened to Uruguay as it progressively became socialistic? Everyone got poor. Sophist to the last. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. Another Marxist attack on private property rights is in the form of federal and state estate taxes and other inheritance taxes, which have abolished or at least greatly diluted the right of private property owners to determine the disposition and distribution of their estates upon their death. Meaning you can't give your house over to your children unless they're going to pay a big old hefty tax on it. Meaning you don't own your property. Confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. We call it government seizure, tax liens, forfeiture, public law, executive order, yada, yada, yada. Gives private land to Department of Urban Development and the IRS confiscation of property without due process. The U.S. government is preparing now for a massive confiscation of private property of patriots speaking out or right against the government. And that is from the crime terror bill, it says. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state. Well, this is the Federal Reserve System. By means of a national bank with a state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Just wait till this is globalized, folks, because it's about to happen with the Great Reset. John Kerry confirmed it today. Confirmed. John Kerry and the Biden campaign are all about the Great Reset. Woohoo! World communism. Stalinists, you finally did it. Oh, man, and you're going to hate it. It's going to suck so bad. You don't know the evil you've brought upon yourself. You don't know the suffering of your children, your neighbors. You have no clue. Federal Reserve System created by the Federal Reserve Act in Congress in 1913 is indeed such a national bank, and it is politically manipulates interest rates and holds a monopoly on illegal counterfeiting in the United States. Now, I made a segment earlier about the 23% increase of cash, largely digital, but of cash by the Federal Reserve from March until October. I don't mean 23% increase as in there was a 23% increase from before. I mean 23% increase of the total, like huge. Like the numbers go like this. They jump off the chart. It's insane. It's going to create inflation, folks. 23% of all the monies that the Federal Reserve pumps out there was created in the last year. You should be very concerned right now. You should be writing your congressmen. You should be out in arms. You should be talking to your neighbors. You should be getting away from the distractions and realize you are being sold down the river by globalists. You don't want to be a debt slave. You don't want to, as Charles Schwab said, own nothing and be happy. Or his organization said, I should say. Centralizations of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. Well, we have the FCC, which is what it says here. Transportation is controlled and regulated by the Department of Transportation and Interstate Commerce Commission. That was established in Congress in 1887, after the Civil War, folks, when the Republic died. And the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as the executive orders, yada, yada, yada. Not to mention the various state bureaucracies and regulations, including state-mandated driver's license. Federal Highway Act of 1916 made federal funds available to states for highway construction. Interstate Highway System, 1944. and so forth. And it just goes on and on and on. Amtrak and Contrail, federal postal monopoly, outright socialist government-owned enterprises. Yeah, the railroads are highly subsidized and basically government-owned, although they're privately run. What's that sound like? Fascism? Yeah, that's what fascism is, folks. At least on the economic side. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, the bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of soil general in accordance with the common plan. We call it corporate capacity, the Desert Entry Act, and the Department of Agriculture, as well as the Department of Commerce and Labor, Department of Interior, Environmental Protection Agencies, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Reclamation, Bureau of Mines, National Park Service, and the IRS control of business through corporate regulations. The Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933 provided that farmers will receive government aid if and only if they relinquish control of farming activities, meaning they are federally subsidized, and it is one of the reasons why we have crap food in the United States. We make a lot of corn. Corn is in everything. We also make a lot of soy, and they want to get rid of cows because they don't want you to be healthy. They literally talk about this. They want, as Agenda 21 states, a reduction in the world population. They want to keep the world population under 500 million. That is a reduction to like less than 1% of the current world population. This, they believe, is sustainable. I don't know why this is magically sustainable, but it is. Look, folks, there's a lot of land out there. Being a U.S. citizen, I can tell you, the United States is huge. Now, if you live in Europe, which has been built up over the years, you might think differently. Go out to Russia, though. A lot of undeveloped land out there. A lot of undeveloped land in China. Obviously, Australia, being an island continent nation, has a ton of land. South America, of course. But, these people, in their demented minds, somehow believe that we are destroying everything in the environment and we can't cohabitate because, no, we're some sort of virus upon the earth. A cancer, if you would, and that is not what human beings are at all. We are the overseers of such things. We are the caretakers of the earth. It doesn't mean that we need to exterminate ourselves or not continue to advance society or technology. In fact, those advancements, as well as free markets, has brought prosperity to the world and brought more people out of abject poverty than ever. Equal liability of all to labor establishments, industrial armies, especially for agriculture, Social Security, social welfare schemes that take place of strict liability. By the way, earlier, and it has a quote here from the Bible, again, not a quote, but a note. Some of those were about your duty to help your fellow man. The Bible commands that. There's a story of the sheep and the goats that Christ gives. And he says at the end, at the judgment, I will lay out the people on the right and the left. The people on my right hand will be the sheeps. The people on the left hand will be the goats. And those of you who gave a drink to those who were thirsty, a meal to those who were hungry, those of you who helped out people, you gave your clothing to, you helped the poor, you will be on my right hand. And you are the sheep. And he meant sheep as in, innocent, that kind of thing. And you will be raised up and you will be given your reward. But those on the right, on the left, those of you who were goats, who when someone came to me and said, I need a drink, I'm hungry, I'm cold, I need clothing, I need help, and you did nothing, he said, you will be cast into the fire. You see, if you're a socialist or a communist and you're a Christian, you're not a Christian. And as God said, as Christ said, he will say, get away from me, you worker of iniquity. I never knew you. You know what iniquity means? Lawlessness. He said that people will come to him and say, Lord, Lord, didn't I prophesy in your name? Didn't I do this? Didn't I do that? He said, get away from me. I never knew you. Never knew you. And yet there are people out there who think that the gospel is some sort of socialist manifesto. It is in no way, shape, or form that. It is a rejection of this world and materialism. And you might say, well, Bill, then how can you preach, free market capitalist type stuff? Because the Bible also teaches, all throughout it, that one must work for themselves if able. You're not to be a leech upon others. So here it says, Exodus 21, that is verse 28 through 36, individual responsibility violates the 10th commandment by appealing to our lust and greed. Although I don't think that the Decalogue, the 10 commandments, is totally applicable to Christians, because Christ brought in a different aspect of things, I should say. Christ himself was the Sabbath. That is the first commandment within the 10 commandments, and God says to remember the Sabbath. But those things change. But Christ is your Sabbath rest. And, if there are any Christians out there listening to me, you might not know what I'm talking about. That's something else we can get into later on, perhaps. Some may call this income redistribution, but the Bible calls it covetousness and theft in violation of Exodus 20, 15 through 17. This and other social programs have enslaved us and future generations with national debt that can never be repaid. And inflation caused by the Federal Reserve has caused the need for a two-income family. It also is it's a hidden tax. The inflation technically is. It devalues your money. It steals from you. Because see, if you actually had the wealth that you should have, based on classical liberal tenets of the U.S. Constitution and biblical principles in which the United States founding was totally under, ideas like Montesquieu and John Locke, for instance, you would be far wealthier than you are today, because your money would have far more value. We wouldn't need a minimum wage. We may need some of the workers' labor's laws that we have, but I doubt it. All that is just socialism, social control, social engineering, top-down authoritarianism. That's all that stuff is. And it hurts people, because when you have a minimum wage, it basically prices people out of the market. So then they get illegal immigrants. You can't work those jobs. You don't build any skills. Young children, kids, whatever, teenagers don't get to build any skills, and low wage jobs like McDonald's or Wendy's or wherever fast food restaurant you might name, or wherever. It's hard to get people there, and that's why you're increasingly seeing, if you've noticed, older and older folks working at those institutions. Currently, from what I understand, McDonald's in this area is paying $15 an hour. That's not a $15 an hour job, folks, and that number will continue to go up as socialism continues to call for it. This happened with the Ukrainian miners. I've covered this before. You can read about this in the book Shakedown Socialism. So let's keep moving. It says the Department of Labor, and it's seen in minimum wage and slave labor like dealing with our most favored national trade partners, Communist China. Women in the workplace since the 1920s, 19th Amendment of the Constitution, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, assorted socialist unions, affirmative action, the federal public works programs. Now, it's listing these things, folks. I believe in egalitarianism. I also believe that men and women have their roles for a reason. They're biologically in place. So don't take this as some sort of fascistic control, you hate women thing. That's not what they're talking about here, I don't think, in any way, shape, or form. They're talking about being against biblical principles. Again, this is from the JeremiahProject.com. It's a Christian site. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of a distinction between town and country by more equitable distribution of the population over the country. By the way, here, the Civil Rights Act as well was unconstitutional. The need perhaps could be justified, but the problem is when you start justifying your needs for process instead of having a constitutional amendment, which, by the way, the 14th Amendment should have already applied, but so we shouldn't have needed a Civil Rights Act. But the need for that was probably somewhat important, but I think society was moving away from that anyways. And all we've done is, as far as any sort of racial injustices have gone, is just prop that up in different ways through socialism. And the Democrats do it astoundingly. And then blame Republicans for, who have had like no power in the government for the last 100 years, like almost none. You could, wait, but Bill, there's been Republican presidents and Congress and Senate, and they've run things, and it's like, yeah, like for 4 years, here and there. Look at your history, folks. Stop being foolish. Stop being ignorant. So, anyways, combination of agriculture, manufacturing industries. We call it Agenda 21, the Plan Reorganization Act of 1949. I want to bring this up, actually. I'm going to get off here in a minute because this is running long, but I'm just saying for another time, we'll cover Agenda 21 along with a bunch of this stuff. The Act of 1949, zoning title, corporate farms, as well as executive orders, free education for all children and governments. Well, obviously, we have public schools, and everyone loves public schools, and everyone's complaining about getting public schools in right now. Yeah, you all are, man, you're so helpless. Ooh, Mark of the Beast system. Yeah, I like it. Like it. I don't know this website, folks. I just do research and I find these things. Here, this is laissez-faire-republic.com. There's the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, and it kind of goes over similar points without the Christian slant. It talks about, so in the U.S., a free country today, hardly, not compared to what it once was, yet very few Americans today challenge these Marxist institutions, and there are virtually no politicians calling for their repeal or even gradual phase out. The United States will continue to socialize, will continue to become Marxist. It is not inevitable in the way that Marx called for it, but inevitable in the way that the Bible says that these things would happen. Here, this is Mises.org. That is the Ludwig von Mises website, Austrian economist. This is Marxism Lives, and this is an article from the Orlando Sentinel in March 18, 1999. It's not very long, but all the same things I just covered, and talking about the same things. This is not some theory that Bill came up with out of the middle of nowhere because he's just some sort of conspiracy theorist. No, I'm educated, and those of you who aren't educated are foolish and ignorant, and you don't think things through. And I understand thinking is difficult. You know, unfortunately, I think a lot. In fact, I have insomnia because I can't stop thinking. I can't sleep. Yesterday, I was up until 10 a.m. That is 10 in the morning. I slept through the day and got up around 3 or something. Like, my brain runs all the time. I'm constantly absorbing information. I have to relax on occasion, so I go watch UFC fights. I watch some fiction on occasion. I read, though, primarily nonfiction. I read primarily information, and it's why I know these things. I read philosophy. I read history. I read religious texts. I read about the occult. I read and I read and I read and I read. Or I listen. I turn on a podcast and I get informed. Does everyone need to be informed the way that I do things? No, I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying, though, is that there are people that are like me that are constantly seeking out the truth, searching for the truth, and absorbing things constantly. And you should be able to filter through who's telling you the truth and who's not. And you need to start listening to those people. You need to start honestly paying attention. Stop listening to the mainstream media. It is designed to brainwash you. I am just here to give you truth and hopefully teach you how to fish. I want you to be independent and free. I want you to live a life that can help society grow by taking personal responsibility instead of throwing it off on the government like some big mommy and daddy nanny state. That's how you make the world better, folks. Not by basically throwing off your obligations to the world, but by embracing them. This is why Jordan Peterson became so popular and so famous so quickly and wealthy as well because of it, because his message was true and people knew it. And only the worst of the worst dregs of society could not stand him. And those were people in the corporate media, and those were people who were these fascists. And when I say fascist, I'm talking about the socialists. I'm talking about the SJWs. I'm talking about Antifa. But Bill, anti-fascist is in their name. Okay. I can shoot someone in the head and say I've never murdered anybody too. It doesn't make it true. They are fascists. You can be like, but they're anarchists. They say they're anarchists. Okay, then why are they beating people up in the street? Why are they authoritarian? Why do they want to give more power to the government? Why do they want to redistribute everyone's wealth? Why do they want to make it racial? Everything is racial to them. Now, the Nazis were primarily the only fascists that really did that, but I'll tell you that communism always has a racial element to it as well. Jews were excised, blacks, other groups, gypsies especially. There are always racial elements in communism and the rejection of it. But see, you read propaganda if you believe in this stuff. You must. Because if you read any real history, you would know this. You would know that Hitler, yeah, was evil, but did far less destruction than Stalin or Mao or the Khmer Rouge or many of the other horrible, horrible communists that have come up over time. Say, Che Guevara, the fashion icon. Guys, if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, Spiro Surakas, I believe that's how you say his name, has all kinds of great stuff on the Great Reset, this stuff that is coming. Literally, John Kerry is on camera saying that the Biden administration will be implementing the Great Reset. Also, check out Dave Cullen at Computing Forever. Both these guys have several thousand subs, but go sub to them. I'm not here to compete with people. I'm here to give information out. Dave did social and cultural commentary forever and after the lockdowns, realizing what is truly happening in the world and what they're using this virus that has a 99.99% survival rate. 99.99% for nearly everybody under the age of 70. Let me remind you that life expectancy is about 70 years old, folks. All right, guys. So with all that said, hey, let me plug real quick. I got another channel, The Ends Justify the Memes. We go live there every Wednesday. Just did an episode yesterday about the Great Reset and some stuff. Actually, was that yesterday's video? I don't think. Was it? No. We talked about some Trump stuff. Where's it at? Right here. Trumpism, deep state, progressive globalism. Yeah. So, but yeah, you can check us out if you want to watch live. Like that'd be great. If we could find us over on D Live, if D Live is preferred, at the ends _justify _memes. That is memes, as it is spelled over here, right? It's a play on words. And I do have a subscribe star if you would like to support me and my family. If not, I will do these videos regardless because, it's what I do. I'm going to pay attention, and I think that I am not being responsible unless I heed to this calling that I believe that I have to share information. And you can ignore me, you can disagree, you can do whatever you want. But in the end, unfortunately, I hope you don't regret it, because I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to point you in a direction of reality so that you may prepare yourself and your family, your loved ones, your friends, whoever it may be. With all that, folks, this has been AllMinucOne, and I wish you all well.